Hi, I'm Dr. Jeff Pettis. I'm an entomologist, and I've worked with honeybees for over 40 years, and I've worked with USDA as an agricultural research scientist for over 20 years.
Welcome back, Dr. Pettis and Justin. We've had the privilege of talking with both of you about the emerging product ApiVera and its potential to help beekeepers with overall colony health and survivability, and the notion that we want stuff that is safe for the bee, safe for the beekeeper, but helping with varroa and potentially other pathogen stressors, viruses, and diseases. And then also, in another way, leaving behind nutrients. So that's all sounds very promising. But let's talk about where we're at with respect to prevention, because so many beekeepers have lost so many hives as a percentage this last couple of years. What are the best methods for prevention, and then how does ApiVera potentially play into that, Justin? So let me start with you, Dr. Pettis. Like, you as a beekeeper, not just as a researcher, how do you approach your hives and their survivability?
Well, I think I talked about it in an earlier episode. The first thing is nutrition. And if I think they're in a situation where I put them on pollination sometimes and the crop doesn't produce much nectar or much pollen, I have to worry about nutrition. So, and the beekeeper, I can go in and look at my colony, look at the brood pattern, and look at the amount of brood food that's in there and tell whether the bees are in good nutritional state. If they're not, then I have to do something. I have to feed them syrup, or I have to feed them some protein supplement. So there are tools out there, but none of them are perfect. None of the protein that we're currently feeding is perfect for bees. But so it starts with nutrition, and then again, looking in my colony, looking for disease in the brood, or doing a sugar shake for varroa mites, following things like that. So I just think about the seasonal calendar, where my bees are at any time in the year, and what treatments or food I might need to add. So it's a moving dynamic, and it comes part with experience and part just following good advice and good calendar, knowing what your bees are doing and how that something that happens in the summer might affect how they overwinter, things like that.
So pretty complex systems, and taking a look at all these individual aspects. So Justin, you kind of designed ApiVera with the mindset, I think, of varroa control, and that's evolved considerably to thinking about this less about varroa and more about colony health and survivability. It almost sounds like there's been a shift more to prevention than reaction. Or could you talk about how you envision TerraVera being used, or ApiVera being used in that respect?
Sure. Once you're infested with mites, it can be really difficult to recover a hive after you get to a certain point. It doesn't matter what you put in it, and I think a lot of beekeepers have, been late to the trying to treat either with some of the conventional things, and we did a similar thing last year with a couple of hives a local beekeeper had. We tried to help them recover them, and they were just too far gone, and it's really hard in climates where you can't use formic to get underneath the brood cap. So there's always a store of mites sort of underneath there. And if you've gotten really infested and you have so many mites just waiting to emerge, there's almost not a treatment regimen where you can catch up. And so a lot of where we've shifted, part of our focus is in trying to with some level of ongoing treatments, being able to keep your hive under control and keep your mite and your pest load in the hive under control. We've also designed the chemistries to have amino acids that we know are very good for bees. Two of the amino acids in our blend targeted for bees have been shown to, and this isn't our work, this is published work in other places, but they've been shown to increase bee recognition and cognition and memory as well. So when they're out foraging, their ability to communicate back, their ability to retain where they saw good forage, that sort of stuff, they've been shown to improve that. One of the other amino acids we use is important in a lot of the pollens that bees collect and use and distribute. We also have a carbohydrate boost in there as well. So there is some sugar. in our blend, because really what we want to leave behind is something that the bees can consume and use and get more out of it than just reduced pest pressure.
So I know we've talked about this in a previous episode, but for folks who are watching this as a standalone, it seems counterintuitive, perhaps to me at least, that you would take food that's occurring in the form of amino acids and carbohydrates that the bees would naturally get, and yet those foods actually are not just helping the bees with nutrition, they're helping to kill mites and potentially prevent or eliminate some of these other microbial or pathogen diseases and viruses, etc. So how is that possible, Justin? How are we taking amino acids, which you said are building blocks, and then leaving those behind for the bees, but in this interim period are, you call it an activated amino acid or an activated chemistry. Could you go into that just a little bit more and recap that?
Sure. There's a few ways that they can be activated, but essentially what we are doing is we strip electrons away from the amino acids. We change their chemical form slightly, such that they're trying to strip electrons back from the environment when we apply them back through. And essentially that's the trick. We turn them into a weak oxidant for a short amount of time. Once they are dried, or once they interact with an organic in the hive, and they convert back directly to the amino acid that they started as. So it's a transient state.
Got it. So it's only during this period that they want to act as an oxidant or strip away electrons that they're active in either killing pathogens or varroa without harming the bee or the beekeeper. And then once they convert back, and what does that convert? What causes the conversion back, if you will?
Well, it's when you do activate them, you move them to a higher energy state, and so the highest level entropy is what drives it back towards that. It's one of the fundamental things that happens in our universe. But everything tries to get back to a lower energy state, and that's what happens. The half-life of these chemistries, if they're not exposed to high temperatures, or and by high temperatures I mean above 120 degrees Fahrenheit, or something, high levels of organics, is about 2 weeks. So they will stay stable for about 2 weeks in the liquid form.
Hey, Carlos, I got a quick story. I got a quick story to tell about how one of the things that hooked me in, I thought you guys were onto something, was as ApiVera, you were fumigating greenhouses with these activated amino acids. And I could see in my mind, okay, you fumigate the greenhouse, you can kill powdery mildew, downy mildew. I mean, those, because I'm a somewhat of a plant pathologist as well. So it's like, that made total sense to me. But then the greenhouse growers were coming back and saying, now we don't have spider mite problems. It's like, wait a minute, you don't have spider mite problems? Spider mites are really hard to kill. So, I mean, they're small mites. But anyway, that to me was intriguing. And I think that's also some of the turning point, you guys looking at other mite species. But for the average beekeeper, homeowner, or anything else, hearing that story, it's like, yeah, we can, in a greenhouse setting, we can kill these two plant pathogens, and we're killing spider mites. It's a powerful story to me.
Well, the next version, at least from my view of that story, was you saying, okay, again, I may not be from Missouri, but show me. And when we gave you some chemistry to try out, it seemed like we started a wonderful relationship from that point on. But let's talk a little bit more about this whole idea of prevention. And so we talked a little bit about this in a previous episode, that it's not enough to treat your hive on an ongoing basis. You're going to lose colonies, whether it's a 10% loss if you're really, 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 really fortunate, or, unfortunately for some folks, 60, 70, 80% losses. We've heard 85% losses, I think, from some of the commercial folks. So now you have this equipment that you've invested a lot of money in, and now you have to go buy expensive nukes or bees to repopulate. So walk us through how you envision using ApiVera, Dr. Pettis, as a preventative tool along this process.
Well, again, you've got this colonies, you got 100 colonies or 1,000 colonies, and you're putting them in different environments throughout the year. And most of the commercial beekeepers are, and they are fairly aware of what nutritionally is coming in, and then they're monitoring for mites. And I just see the ApiVera product as being able to use. It's not going to be temperature dependent or anything like that. So if your mite levels, as Justin mentioned, your mite levels are already low, well, maybe you can use it sparingly, or through the summer you can use it to keep the hive healthier throughout the year. Because what tends to happen is we tend to have high winter losses, but the winter losses are set up by what happened even in the spring or summer, the nutrition that they had, what they had to stores and stuff. So having a product that can reduce pathogen load, varroa load, maybe add nutrition to the colony, I think it sets us up for being able to manipulate the hives and keep them healthier and not have these late fall and winter losses that we've been experiencing.
Justin, anything you want to add to the preventative care component?
No, I think that Jeff spoke to it very well.
Good. Well, we're going to wrap this episode up, and coming back, we'll have a chance to talk about what kind of results you guys have seen in the field with hives that you've been applying to, and talk more about what's next. All right. So with that, I'm here with Dr. Pettis and Justin Sanchez, CTO and developer of ApiVera. And we've talked about how colony loss have continued to go in the wrong direction. Beekeepers are really struggling with good tools. The promise of ApiVera that is not only safe for the bee and the beekeeper, but also seems to do a good job with varroa control and potentially some of these other pathogens and diseases, and then leaves behind nutrients. So kind of works on multiple stressors, if you will. So you've had the chance to do this not only in the lab, both of you, but also in the field on hives that you're treating, Justin, with beekeepers locally, and then Dr. Pettis with your own hives and with some beekeepers you're working with. So maybe, Justin, could you start off telling us what testing has been done so far, and then Dr. Pettis, maybe your experience as well in the field?
Yeah, I mean, the first do no harm. We've tested, we've applied this several thousand times now to different hives in various environments. We've never seen anything negative happen to a hive or to the adult bees themselves. We've seen typically reduced mite loads, pathogen pressure, increased propolis production. It seems like the honey production has gone up a little bit, although we have not, again, statistically quantified that. The bees, when we fog it, they tend to, as Jeff mentioned, calm down. It looks like they actually kind of like it, believe it or not. So they're definitely consuming some of the nutrients kind of on the spot when we fog it into a hive. I guess our biggest result, and again, it was on a small field trial, 12 total hives, but our biggest result that we saw an increase in hive survivability over the course of the field trial. That was pretty large. It was about a four times hive survivability over that amount of time versus hives that got no treatment. And the hives that we got no treatment, they went exactly as we would have predicted. The mite counts kind of spiraled out of control, and the populations diminished over time, whereas we were able to keep the hives we were treating in much better shape.
Dr. Pettis, what's been your experience?
Well, so far, combining both the laboratory work that we've done with caged honeybees for looking, make sure it was safe against adult honeybees, then I've literally taken the straight material and sprayed it in little patches. Little patches of unsealed brood, and gone back a week, 10 days later, and seen that they've raised that brood out, that it wasn't affected. So I've done several brood tests and adult bee tests that convinced me that it's safe. On the control, I've had less opportunity to do the varroa control studies simply because I've had very little varroa here, which is a good problem to have. But I did do a small fall trial last year, and I was killing varroa at what is an acceptable rate. We'd like to improve the rate of varroa kill, but we got an acceptable rate. And I was really impressed by the safety issue for brood. Just this spring, I did some testing on queen. The commercial guys that raise queens, we had some really good results from treating those queen cell building colonies, and it looked completely safe in that environment as well. So safety wise, it looks really good. And varroa, killing, we're continuing to tweak it to make it more effective. Yep.
So, Justin, what are your thoughts on that? I know you've talked about how in some early versions you see, mite drops increase 24-hour post treatment 6 to 12x, sometimes higher. But it sounds like we want to take that even higher for efficacy. Is it, getting in contact? So, where are you at today? Where do you think you're going, and any implications on increasing the efficacy to the safety, or any downsides to trying to make it more effective?
Not really, not that we've seen so far. Some of the things that we're looking at is increasing the amount of active oxidant in the blend. We've also looked at changing the way that we, force the fog through the hive and how exactly we do that. So we're working on some of those things, trying to make it faster. But no, there's, like I think Jeff said it really well. We have an acceptable level today with sort of the tech as it sits, and we can we know there's some levers we can use to improve that.
Excellent. So, anything you guys, either of you, have seen in either lab, cage bee, or full-on field trial work that has been surprising in a positive or negative sense? I'll start with you, Dr. Pettis. Anything you've seen that kind of caught you off guard?
Well, not off guard. The fact that when you start to fog them, they calm down, and it doesn't seem to, even though you're fairly saturating the environment with fog, it doesn't seem to have negative effects. Trying to think of beyond that. Oh, and literally taking, because I wasn't able to fog the unsealed brood, so I literally was spraying material directly in the cell, and back to, we talked about how long it was active and stuff. Whatever got in those cells, the larvae survived, the bees reared them out, and they were normal. So that was a worst case scenario. So I was pretty impressed by that. The fact that we don't seem to be harming unsealed young brood, which does happen with formic acid. When you treat a hive with formic acid, the fumes go throughout the hive, and every beekeeper who uses it knows young exposed brood will be killed. And so they're willing to take that trade-off. Here it looks like fogging, we're not killing young brood, which is a great thing.
Justin, have you seen anything that has caught your attention, or maybe could be studied in more detail?
Jumping on Jeff's point a little bit, the first time we fogged this chemistry into a hive, I expected to get chased away, and the exact opposite happened. Everybody, all the girls got calm, and we're just sort of hanging out. The other thing that I think I've observed that is, again, and I mentioned it in a previous episode, that I think was interesting was, we did see an increased propolis amount. The hives tended to be, again, I can't quantify this exactly. They tended to be stickier, harder to open when they were being tested, or when they were being treated with the ApiVera solution. So that was something I didn't necessarily expect. In fact, I would have maybe thought it would have been the opposite. But that was something I observed that I didn't necessarily expect.
So, Dr. Pettis, any thoughts on what might be going on, positive or negative there?
Well, so they use, like I said earlier, they use propolis to seal up little cracks and crevices in the hive. And also when they coat areas of the hive with propolis, it acts as a disinfectant. So I'm not sure why the response is like that, other than maybe something about the fogging. They were perceiving it as some kind of intrusion. So they just got more active. But I can see a positive side of it. We fog for a certain amount of time, for one day. If they add propolis, they're increasing the antibacterial activity throughout in the interim. So as beekeepers, we can deal with propolis. It's not such a bad thing. And
it may be an indication that they're actually healthy. If unhealthy colonies can't create that as much as healthy colonies, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, could be.
So we're going to talk in a future episode about what's next, but kind of as a transition, what would you like to see studied? If you guys could do some next work with either scientists, beekeepers in the field, or true scientists in the lab or at the universities, what are the areas you guys would like to see studied or have planned to be studied, I guess, in the next year or so? I'll start with you, Dr. Pettis. What are you hoping to see?
I'd like to see some whole colony trials against varroa, um, just with in different parts of the country, and maybe east and west or something, with a certain number of colonies. Because I think we still need to understand the rate of application. I think we're still going to probably be in this 7 to 10 day repeat application right now because of varroa coming out of the brood cells, unless we can get something that penetrates brood cells. But so we have the time intervals are correct, but I think I'd like to see some trials with different amounts of a material applied, at least a low dose and a high dose, and we're also working to increase the speed at which we fog the hive, so that could be a great thing for commercial beekeepers. So I think just good field trials against varroa, and then we also are doing some work with pathogens, European foul brood probably, and maybe American foul brood, but European foul brood we haven't even talked about it, but it's an ongoing issue. It's bacterial, and it should be susceptible to the cleansing effect of this disinfecting in the hive. So European foul brood, some of the trials we've talked about with European foul brood could be very telling.
And Justin, what about you? What data would you like to see collected over the next couple of months?
Well, I think getting the technology out into different, not to say microclimates, but different regions, so that we can get a sense for how it might work in different parts of the country. My pet project over the next couple of years is for sure going to be figuring out a way to get the chemistry to penetrate the brood cap. I really do think we have a good shot at doing that. Again, the chemistry as it stands today, or the chemistries you have available today, cannot. But the reasons why are pretty clear, and there's pretty clear workarounds for that. So excited about working on that over the next few years.
Excuse me. Excellent. So let's leave the viewers with this thought that it sounds like you're looking for more applications, more testers, more in the field work. Sounds like the work so far has been promising. And again, if it can be effective against varroa and other diseases, it can be safe for the bee and for the beekeeper. It can be cost effective, which is not just the cost of product, but time effective, and then leave behind no residual. It sounds like we're onto something.